Kia ora, good evening. An attempt to re-establish kokako on Secretary Island in Fiordland appears to have failed. A partnership between the Fiordland Lobster Company and the Department of Conservation saw the transfer of 27 kokako from the North Island to Secretary Island during 2008-9. It was hoped the population would re-establish, and hopes of success were raised in 2011 when 2 pairs and a fledged bird were sighted. However, a search this year failed to find any kokako on Secondary Island, and DOC says while it cannot categorically be said there are no surviving birds, evidence suggests most have perished. SBS held its annual general meeting today, confirming a $20.9 million operating surplus in the 2013 financial year. That rise in profit is an 18% increase and was described as very pleasing given the current economy. ASB Bank Chief Executive Ross Smith also addressed the meeting about the bank's planned move into the Auckland housing market, saying SBS expects to be fully in place in 2 months' time. The Reserve Bank is considering introducing loan restrictions to help moderate house price inflation pressures, but speaking after the meeting, Mr Smith says it won't impact SBS's move on Auckland.
Certainly won't change our plans. We're in there right now. We're not set up to a point where we are generating the business that we expect we will, but we are already there and we don't see it changing our plans at all.
What about for your customers? Do you expect an effect for customers in terms of if they have to have a 20% deposit?
Well, naturally it will affect those that don't have 20% deposit. However, it's fair to say they're not in the highest majority. Now, we don't have lengthy experience in the Auckland market, and given the size of the loans out there, we may find that it does affect more than it affects in the rest of the country. But we're sure that we can get around that, and we don't think it's going to restrict our ability to generate business.
Do you think it may slow it though?
Oh, well, it should do. That's what it's designed to do, so you would expect that is going to be the case. Less people will be eligible to purchase at that level.
Does that make it a less attractive opportunity for SBS moving into that market?
No, because the size of the market is such that even if we take that level of business out, there is still going to be sufficient for us to gain significant momentum up there.
Now, in terms of Southland, obviously we don't have the same sort of housing problems here. What kind of impact do you think it could have in the province here if that change is introduced by the Reserve Bank?
Well, it will have some impact, but nowhere near as much as it would in the Auckland market, because the ability to say 40,000 is a bit easier than 150,000 or whatever their deposit is up in Auckland. So it will have an impact, but nowhere near as great, and we don't see it as being a major impediment to business down here.
Do you think it will have any impact on your annual results next year?
The decision by the RBNZ, no, I don't. Our move into Auckland, I would rather hope so, because that's the whole objective for it. We would expect to see some improvement in our overall result, definitely.
Field trials are underway at a secret location north of Auckland that could alter the face of New Zealand's dairy industry. A series of cage experiments have shown dung beetles will have a positive effect on sediment and nutrient runoff into streams while reducing greenhouse gases and lifting soil fertility. Environment Southland is a partner of the Dung Beetle Research Strategy Group and is hopeful the exotic insects will be available for purchase in the near future.
In 2008 there was a group of farmers in the north of Auckland that wanted to import dung beetle species into the country. There's been an introduced species in the country since the 1950s, but it wasn't active right throughout the season, so the group of farmers up there saw the benefits of it and put a project together and a group together to try and import other dung beetle species that would be more active right throughout the year.
So what are the benefits of them?
Well, the dung beetles process dung from herbivores, so your cattle, your sheep and goats and things like that. So they process that dung, they make the nutrients that are available in that dung available to pasture species. They also reduce the habitat for flies with dung sitting on top of the surface, and they increase the actual pasture available to animals as well.
So what could that mean for farmers, dairy farmers in particular in Southland?
Well, and dairy farmers in particular, they'll receive benefits from the nutrients from the dung that's currently just sits on the soil surface. It's also reduced runoff from dung and that sort of water quality issue that we face down here.
So how soon could they be available?
Well, at the moment they're going through a series of cage trials in the north of Auckland just to try and address some of the concerns that have been raised about them. Once the results of those trials are achieved, then there's an advisory group that will assess them and make the decision then if the beetles are available for release.
And they'll be available for purchase?
They will be available for purchase ultimately, yeah. It'll take a while for the project to get up and running to breed the beetles up so that people can buy them.
And is there anything else that they eat aside from dung?
No, they specifically target herbivorous dung. Yeah.
Can they potentially become a pest for New Zealand?
That's one of the concerns that's been raised about introducing them to the country, and there's been quite a bit of work gone into that, and they've come to the conclusion that they don't pose a risk to the country.
Do they put any other animals at risk?
Again, another concern is that they might potentially spread animal diseases, bovine tuberculosis. So some of these trials have addressed those questions, and they've concluded that there's no real risk from that.
So how many species could we see here in New Zealand eventually?
Eventually we'd like to introduce 11 species, so that's to cover the range of climates that we have right throughout the country and to cover the seasons as well, because the beetles are active at different times of the year.
Stay with us after the break. Fewer Kiwis are crossing the ditch to Australia, but why that's expected to change. Welcome back. The Reserve Bank should leave the official cash rate on hold at 2.5% in its review tomorrow, according to a panel of economists, academics and business leaders. The official cash rate, which influences New Zealand's market interest rates, has sat unchanged since March 2011. The NZIER Shadow Board is recommending interest rates are kept on hold ahead of Reserve Bank's statement. NZIER senior economist Dr Curtin Lee says inflation has been low, but the economy is lifting and confidence measures have picked up. He says on balance, the Shadow Board thinks leaving rates where they are is the best move. Fewer New Zealanders emigrated to Australia last month, the smallest net loss since 2010. Figures from Statistics New Zealand show the net loss of 1,600 migrants to Australia was well down on the high of 3,600 in September 2011. However, according to a University of Canterbury social science lecturer, while New Zealanders are not crossing the Tasman for work as much as they used to, the trend will change as the Australian economy picks up. Associate Professor Lyndon Fraser says trans-Tasman migration patterns are cyclical, circular and increasingly permanent, and predicts more people will head to Australia when its economy improves. Fairfax Media New Zealand is currently restructuring operations across the country in a bid to bring down operating costs. The restructure comes in the wake of a reported 39% loss in profits on the previous year. Engineering, Printing and Manufacturing Union District Organiser Trevor Hobbs says in Southland 3.5 roles will go, including a Queenstown reporter, a part-time photographer role and a community editor's position. The latest restructure follows the printing press closure at the Southland Times last year, with the paper now being printed by the Otago Daily Times. Fairfax also owns Stuff, the Dominion Post and the Sunday Star Times. Southlanders are being asked to put their best photographs forward for a new book being published about the region. Invercargill business Craig's Design and Print is in the process of publishing Pride of Southland. The idea of publishing a book on the region had been bandied about for a few years, but it wasn't until earlier this year that the decision was made to move ahead. The book is expected to be 156 pages and 120 photographs, with an estimated first run of 3,000 to 4,000 copies. Sales and Marketing Manager Ruth Leishout is calling on the public to submit their recent photos from around the province.
Well, we want as many photos again of Southland, all of Southland, not just Invercargill. So we want all the areas covering lifestyle, tourism and industry. We can't take all these photos, but we reckon there's a lot of Southlanders out there with absolutely fabulous photos of Southland, their shots.
So why do this book?
We've thought for a long time that we need a book on Southland. If you're trying to source one, there is nothing pictorial on Southland itself. It might be the areas of Fiordland or Stewart Island, but you'll be very lucky to find more than 1 or 2 pictures of Invercargill, maybe Felwood Gates and the signpost at Bluff. And we thought there was a definite need for it because it is the best place in New Zealand.
Now, this book is described as a community project. What do you mean by that?
We're asking other businesses and people in Southland to work with us on this project so that we can have this book out there at a very realistic price, because we want as many people as possible to be able to purchase it. And we found a lot of Southlanders are very keen to get behind it and are also very happy to help us.
Now, in terms of this book, I guess, does it come down to will you make a profit on this book, or is it more of just getting the book out there and making something about Southlands?
Well, naturally, we are a business, so we are going to print this book, and we need to make it viable. But we also want to, by making it a community project involving companies and individuals, we want it to be as realistically priced so that everyone can have it, but we also do well out of it.
In terms of this project, you started a few months ago working on the book. How long before the book is actually being published?
The book is going to be on sale on the 1st of November this year, ready for the Christmas market and people to be able to send overseas or have them for Christmas presents, or we'll be printing it in September.
Is that a tight time frame?
Reasonably tight, but we have control over it because apart from the binding, we are doing everything in-house, so we can make it happen.
How much interest do you expect there to be for a book like this?
Well, we found there's going to be huge interest. We've had a lot of people who are very keen to help work with it, and huge interest because everyone's looking for this book. International students, overseas visitors, gifts for people who come to Southland. A lot of business people are looking for the perfect gift, and there isn't anything on Southland to showcase our wonderful province.
And that's it from the news team. Coming up in sport, former English county cricketer Kevin Cooper with an Ashes update. That's after the weather next from your news team. Good night.